I'm Cindy Ross. I'm from Bowling Green State University, and I'm going to be the moderator of the session just to help Amy out a little bit. If you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. And, if Amy needs help with seeing the chat, I will interrupt and let her know you have a question. And then let her know when there's like 5 minutes left of our time together. I'm going to go ahead and let Amy introduce herself so she can tell you a little bit more about herself, where she's from, and about her presentation. So thank you and welcome, Amy.
All right, thank you. Thank you for joining me this morning. This is so weird to talk to nobody. So I am a 5th and 6th grade science teacher in Perrysburg at our newest school called PRAIRIE. And it's a 5-6 building. There are over 800 students in that building. This year I'm teaching 5th grade. We loop. So next year I am teaching 6th grade with the same students, which is a really, really nice, I really like that setup. We've had we've gone through our loop once, and I really enjoy having the kids 2 years in a row, believe it or not. There's an escape clause for everybody. If the kids don't like you, or you don't like I don't want to say you don't like the kid, but if there's a mismatch, there is an escape clause, we call it, for everybody. So, but for the most part, we found that the kids really enjoy the loop. It helps have one less transition. They're more familiar with the school, and we can get started with teaching right away. So today I'm going to talk about ecology and citizen science in the elementary, middle school classrooms. It can also go up to the high school, but I'm more at the elementary, middle school level. Ecology is simply getting your kids outside. And I see, Stacy, you're from Mommy, and you are going to have a prairie very, very soon. Gateway already has one in Mommy. So getting your kids outside and making sense of the world around them and sharing what they find with scientists, which is citizen science. If you want this presentation at another time, there's a link down there at the bottom, and I'm sure Project Impact will be sharing the link with you as well. Okay, so this is one of my favorite pictures of having the kids outside. So that's our school there in the background. The kids are standing in the prairie with ginormous underwear because we were burying them for science. So you can tell a lot about the condition of your soil, which is a 6th grade science standard, by how the underwear turns out after they've been buried for 3 months. So if your soil is nice and healthy, microbes literally eat the underwear, and all you have left are the waistband and the leg holes. So it is a super fun thing for the kids to see and do. I bought the biggest underpants I could find. The kids had a great time with it. But you can see we just dug holes in various places in the prairie, and we sparked their curiosity. Unfortunately, we went into all remote when it was time to dig them up. So we had to dig them up on video. And one of my colleagues was super funny. He dug up a little tiny pair of his little toddler's underwear, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, they shrank it." And so we had to have a good time with it. But the kids really just getting out there and being curious, and something as simple as underwear can spark their imagination to get out there. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Project PRAIRIE, which is a formal program through the Toledo Zoo, a partnership with Mommy, Perrysburg, and Toledo Public Schools, which is growing into Sylvania Schools, Springfield, and Washington Local. But it was initially with Perrysburg, Mommy, Chase STEM in Toledo, and the Toledo Zoo. The Toledo Zoo has an arm called Wild Toledo that has been installing urban prairies around the city. You'll notice there, if you go to the zoo, there's a big strip right down the middle of the Anthony Wayne Trail. If you travel 475, you can see one on the grounds of Owens, Illinois. You can see one on the backside of the sledding hill in Perrysburg. So they were around. And then they reached out to myself and Mike Dick, who teaches in Maumee. And that's a picture of the two of us that, of course, ended up in the Blade. Right? Great picture of him, but terrible picture of me. We were releasing and catching butterflies. So they reached out to us and said, hey, we'd like to reach out and get into schools with our prairies and to start training teachers how to get kids out into the prairies. So that's how Project PRAIRIE began. This is the founding group of teachers from Project PRAIRIE. You might recognize some faces there. Mommy does a really nice job of showing up in their purple. But we had a great time. So we were on the grounds of the zoo. They too have a native prairie there, and they taught us how to use it, how to get out into it, and how to start appreciating nature and how to get kids into appreciate nature. So a native prairie is simply plants that should be in Ohio. So no trees, it's all grasses, flowers, not even shrubs. So nothing woody is in a prairie. It's just all native grasses mainly and flowers. So these school prairies were installed by the Toledo Zoo and Wild Toledo with funds from an initial EPA grant. And then there was some professional development for us teachers around something called citizen science, native prairie plants, and pollinators, and specifically monarchs, which are quickly approaching the endangered species list, unfortunately. So that is how a monarch is tagged there in that picture. If you've ever been curious or haven't seen a monarch being tagged, they have these little tiny stickers with little tiny details on them. And we taught the kids how to tag them and then track them using citizen science called Monarch Watch. So they can see how they travel. So why would we put prairies at schools? Prairies have a lot of benefits, and you can see them down there at the bottom. We put the one in at Hall Prairie, which is nearly 2 acres, before the school was built. So I met with our groundskeeper person, and he was happy to not have to mow those 2 acres. So it does provide beauty and habitat for living things. It reduces upkeep. It actually decreases carbon dioxide. These plants with their amazing roots hold on to carbon dioxide, and they kind of sequester that into the soil. So it makes the air we're breathing even healthier, and it reduces runoff. So all of our schools have big, massive parking lots. These prairies can catch the salt and pollution that comes from our cars and hold on to it so it doesn't end up in our waterways. So Hall Prairie was actually a farm for 100 years. And so there's also a lot of fertilizer left in the soil. So our prairie is actually holding on to that fertilizer instead of releasing it into the ditch and then into the river, which causes the algae blooms. So they do a lot of great things besides just being beautiful. One of the projects we do with the kids is we make lifestyle roots or life-size roots of these plants. So some of these roots extend 20 feet into the ground. So much more on the root end than the plant end. And they spend their first 3 years developing their roots. Here's some of us learning our training at the zoo, learning to catch butterflies and tag them. And Mitch Magditch is the curator of education at the zoo, and he's kind of the mastermind behind all of this and getting teachers to feel comfortable taking kids outside. And I can tell you that this year in a pandemic, I spent a good 12 weeks outside with my kids and taught my standards being outside because we needed to be outside. It was a good way to get a quick little mask break, and the weather cooperated, and it was better for the kids than sitting inside. So getting outside really, really was a benefit, and having this area on our school is a huge benefit. So this is the prairie at Hall Prairie. You can see it is native grasses. You can see the school in the background. We have paths mowed through there, but you can see it's about waist high on the kids. So some of them definitely do run through the prairie. They don't have to stay on the path. But they're just getting them outside, and it butts up to our playground. So the kids are allowed in there even during recess so they can spend some time, and they'll come in with caterpillars for me and frogs and spiders and all kinds of things that they have found out there. There is my initial group of kiddos with our prairie when it was first planted. And down there in the bottom picture, we were actually hand seeding a section of the prairie. And it made it in the news. Oh, I'm sorry. So again, these were developed or put in by the zoo and to teach the kids inquiry and to get them outside and to start asking questions about the world around them. That is Mitch Magditch over there on the right, helping a student tag a butterfly. But these were our initial number of students involved with Project Prairie. Oh, this is going to be great. My dog woke up. So it's a continuing partnership. We have added on, you can see down there, St. Pat's, Springfield, Oregon. There is room for your school. We've even added some more schools this year. Do I have any questions while I'll pause for a second. I talked a lot about what Project Prairie actually is. And you can get involved. And Ryan, I saw that you're at Perrysburg. I can help you get involved. Ryan, which school are you at?
I'm at Frank and Woodland.
Okay, so Woodland has a small section of prairie that the zoo put in out in the park. So I can help you get there. Frank does not have one yet, but I can certainly, if you're interested, help you get one. I
Yeah,
would love
thank
to
you.
see one over there. There's plenty of room back there along the neighborhood line to put in a prairie. It does not have to be 2 acres. And then Stacy, you're at Wayne Trail.
Yes,
Okay, so I believe you're getting one this spring.
we already had one last spring, I think,
Okay.
put in. So it looks to people, it looks like a big old brown patch.
Yes, because they kill the
But
grass.
it's
They
yes,
round up the grass
yes.
first.
So it's not doing a whole lot yet that we can see, but it's there.
Okay,
And we
so
have
the
our
first,
sign too.
terrific. So the first year is a little frustrating because of that very thing, and you're ready to get outside and do stuff. So you can start to use some of these lessons in areas around the school. I know Wayne Trail's pretty manicured, but you can find
Yeah.
some spots, or you take a walk over to Gateway.
Yeah, we do have a nice area like in the front where Christine Smith has planted like a bunch of different plants. There's some sunflowers and milkweed and things like that. We
Oh,
find a lot
perfect.
of
Yeah, so you
monarchs
guys
and
are on the way.
caterpillars. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, hopefully this sparks you to take your kids out as well. So we use something called Citizen Science. These are websites or apps that are focused on getting ordinary people, including kids, to report things to scientists. So we use one called Monarch Watch to report when we spot a monarch in the wild or when we tag and release monarchs. We buy caterpillars from the zoo and then release them, raise them in the classroom and then release them. And then we also have a milkweed field at school where we watch the monarchs and then tag them as they emerge. E-butterfly is for all kinds of butterflies. Bumblebee watch is just what it sounds like, bumblebees. There are 100 varieties of bumblebees, believe it or not. And so Bumblebee Watch is interested in finding out where those bees are and how they're traveling and how their colonies are surviving. And then lastly, we use iNaturalist across all the schools. So this is a screenshot of iNaturalist. Kids or teachers can take photos outside and then you upload it in. And then a scientist confirms your identification. So you can see there the common eastern bumblebee was put in by me. And then I took that picture and thought, okay, this is a common eastern bumblebee. And then down below, you can see that a scientist confirmed my observation. So there are scientists on the other end of this that help the kids with their identification of these things, plants, animals, insects. It all goes into iNaturalist, and then it's tagged for Project Prairie. And then we have a database that we can look at with the kids. Who's got more monarchs? Who's got more bumblebees? Who's seeing deer? Who's seeing frogs? Who's got more yellow flowers? So we can do all kinds of things with this data from iNaturalist as well. So in the first year, we just kind of focused real small. We were tagging and releasing monarchs. We were writing poems about monarchs. We were using Monarch Watch to just kind of symbolize and watch those monarchs go to Mexico. Monarch Watch has a fantastic program where your kids in America can write to kids in Mexico. And then you send little paper monarchs down to Mexico. And then when the monarchs arrive in Mexico, the Mexican school children send paper monarchs back to your kids. So it's a really, really great program. We send them in the fall. They send them back in the spring. It's an amazing program. We taught the kids to write in Spanish and, you know, just a simple little hello, my name is, and I'm in 5th grade and I go to Hall Prairie School in Perrysburg. Which they really liked, you know, learning a new little foreign language. Year 2, we started to identify plants with the kids and insect identification as more plants were coming into our prairie. That top picture up there with the white square, that's called a transect. So you can put down PVC pipes, or we use hula hoops at my school. And then the kids just look for variety inside the hoop and what kind of different things can they see. It helps them to focus in on one little section so that they're not looking at this huge prairie and going, well, I don't know, there's a lot of different yellow plants in here. But they can focus in on one section. And we give them hand lenses and tweezers and little vials and things to count and look at plants. So this is gateways in Maumee, some things that they were doing early on. Their prairie is right next to the bus garage, much smaller than mine. I think he has 900 square feet, but it's plenty to get the kids out there. And he's been doing experiments with seeds and how to seeds grow, and then planting them out in their prairie. They even took some seeds from their plants and went to the seed swap with Toledo Grow, and shared some seeds with kids. So getting the kids involved right away is a great way to get them to buy in. So here's some press from Gateway in their early days of their prairie. And there's some lesson plans that we have developed. Scavenger hunts, find a pink flower, find a bug with 6 legs, find a worm, find a green plant, find a plant taller than you, find a plant smaller than your pinky. So some things to just get them out there and making some observations. This was one activity where they were learning to name plants. But they're just, kids unfortunately don't get outside and play much anymore, as much as they should, and run around in the woods and run around in fields of flowers. And so we're encouraging that, to get outside and, and really stop and take a notice of what you're seeing and find things that you're not familiar with. The zoo also, as part of our project, comes out and does some inquiry lessons with our students in a non-pandemic year. This year of these pictures, they brought these Madagascar hissing cockroaches. So can you see that cockroach in the middle there? The kids designed experiments with these cockroaches. Did they like the dark? Did they like the light? Did they like wet spots? Did they like dry spots? Did they like, what kind of foods did they like to eat? Just to get them to start thinking about science as an inquiry and a way to ask questions and to start exploring ideas. So the zoo uses a model called Quest, which is in that picture on the left, which just gets kids questioning and then experimenting to find some answers. And then you can see some of the other pictures up there in the top right. They are sorting lupin seeds. So lupin is native to oak openings, and it brings in the blue Carinor butterfly, which is on the endangered species list. Bottom right, those kiddos are separating some milkweed pods into seeds to plant. And then in the middle 2 pictures, we were tagging and writing down some data on butterflies. This is one of my favorite parts in the fall. One of the teachers in our building her home butts up to a field of milkweed. And so she brings these pods in, just garbage bags full of them. And then the kids take those pods and separate the seeds. You can see down there in the middle and then bottom left, they separate the pods. They're like, if you've never seen the inside of a milkweed pod, it's kind of like corn on the cob, just hundreds of these little brown seeds. And they come on fluff. So we do it outside because they're very, very fluffy. But then whatever seeds you don't physically plant just blow off into the wind and they get planted somewhere. So we're helping the monarchs. The kids really look forward to this milkweed. Lucas County Soil and Water in downtown Maumee collects milkweed pods because then they are a partnership with ODOT, the Ohio Department of Transportation, and the prison system, believe it or not. And those milkweed seeds go to the prison system to be separated. And then ODOT plants the seeds in the medians along the freeway. So, and ODOT actually has a policy where they will not mow those medians in the freeway until late October when the monarchs have left our area. So it's a really great partnership between Lucas County Soil and Water, the prisons, and the Ohio Department of Transportation, all with the mindset of looking out for pollinators and butterflies. So next spring, take a look, and in the fall, take a look and see if you too can spot those milkweed growing along the freeway. My kids love to point it out, and then they love to tell me when it accidentally gets mowed too early. They come in and tell me, they mowed it, it's only October 1st. But milkweed's resilient, it comes right back. Some other cool things we've done, taught the kids how to identify scat, which is the fancy word for poop. in the prairie. So up top left there, I have these fantastic rubber poop samples of native Ohio animals. And the kids just go around, we teach them what kind of animals poop in pellets and what kind poop in tapers and what kind of, poop you might find in the prairie. And then I actually took my dog for a walk on the prairie and she spotted all kinds of scat for me. So you can see there bottom left, there's some rabbits. You can see in the middle, I have marked them with stakes. And then the kids took some observations and tried to figure it out. And actually those pictures there in the top right are animals that we found scat from. So, and we also have a trail camera in our prairie, which takes pictures night and day of whatever walks through. And we have seen fox, raccoon, coyote, deer, rabbits, squirrel. There's a nice little house cat that comes through every once in a while. And I caught someone trying to steal my camera. So, yeah, I took a nice little picture of him, which was easy to send in. So the camera has a lock, so no worries. But this was just one of those ways to get kids to notice things, to look down. And, instead of just running through the prairie like it's this racetrack, but to really get out there and start making some observations. And who doesn't love poop? Kids love poop. Plus, it's an indicator of the animals that have been in the prairie. So teaching them that somebody is using our prairie as a home. One of the biggest things is just fostering curiosity. Just really, so the white plant is boneset, the yellow plant is goldenrod. So this is in our prairie. One of the other teachers took this picture of that monarch. If this was a field just for the kids to play in, like just a recess field, we'd never have this variety of plants. We'd never have these butterflies or these insects. So providing this visual wonder for the kids as well. So I use this paper called I Wonder. It's from Mystery Science. And I give them a clipboard and make them sit down and sit there for 10 minutes without talking to anybody, which is really hard. And they just have to study one plant and what do they find. So you can see this kiddo was looking at goldenrod and then they have to ask questions. Why is there, the little bugs and the beetles, there were yellow jackets, there was some brown, just really making some observations and then zeroing in on part of the plant that they want to learn more about. And then they start to take photographs out there and then they start to use field guides and their computer to do their own research to figure out what all of that is on there. So we've really fostered some curiosity in the kids and they're really starting to take ownership out there in the prairie. So these are little vials that I got really cheap on Amazon. And we taught the kids how to humanely catch things, catch and release. So there you can see there's a big old grasshopper down there in the middle. You can see the girl on the left, she's using a field guide to identify some beetles. Top right, she wanted to know what these seed pods were on this particular plant. And of course, they found a big old toad, which they wanted to bring in and keep. And caterpillars and just it's a wonder what things are out there. And I personally have been a notice of those things, but teaching kids to see those things just really, it warms your heart. And to see kids taking an interest and wanting to know what it is and asking you questions. I have an app that helps me identify stuff because of course I don't know it all. But just getting them to appreciate and understand what it is. And I always teach them that science is understanding the world around you. So be curious and look for things. So this was Chase. And those kids, man, they have an amazing property at Chase Elementary in Toledo. I don't know if you've been out there. The Metro Parks just put in a new Metro Park, Howard Marsh, I believe it's called. No, I don't think it's Howard Marsh. It's something, Manhattan Marsh. So it butts right up to Chase's property. And then they also have a wooded area and some native gardens and some native planting. So these kids really got involved as well. And just, as a city student, they don't have as much opportunity to be out in nature. And so this really gave these Chase students a great opportunity to learn as well. So they're still fostering that relationship as well. Our project made it into the news a lot. After the initial grant from the EPA, we applied for a couple grants from Martha Holden Jennings. And they really supported our project as well and helped us to get some of that equipment for our classroom and to get some training for our teachers and some trade books. We bought a lot of picture books to go along with our Prairie. So the Prairie's had some lasting impact. We've created citizen scientists they care about the world around them. They're educating their parents. They talk to us, they talk to each other, they talk to their parents. I have a little girl this fall who convinced her parents to take a quarter of their backyard and turn it into native plants and a pollinator garden. And so just even though it's one, that one is so important. And that little girl is so excited. And our little local newspaper picked up her story and she can't wait. And she's been asking me and she said, Mrs. Boris, my milkweed looks dead. And I said, yeah, it's supposed to. And, and I don't see anything. And I said, well, just wait till spring. It's going to come alive and you'll have all kinds of really cool things there. So they really just take ownership of it and they want to know. I mean, look at those little faces down there. They're so curious. They want to see those things and they want to know what's going on. I really feel that, so that in the orange there, that's a quote from me that I had in the newspaper, but I really honestly, truly believe this way, that they have internalized their learning about these butterflies and they're curious and they want to know more and they've taken ownership. And that's when deep learning really takes place. They love it. The ooh and ah factor, it just helps them really to be engaged. So they have taken ownership of their learning. This fall, we had some monarchs that we were raising in the classroom and they died. The caterpillars never went into the chrysalis. They just hung there black. And so the kids did a natural PBL, a natural problem-based learning. Why are the monarchs alive outside, but the ones inside are dead? And then they started to make some observations and a white string came out of the dead caterpillar. And then there were some larvae that looked like brown Tic Tacs on the bottom of our cage. And then those larvae hatched into these little tiny tsetse flies. So our caterpillar had a parasite. So, and they were ones that came from the zoo. So all of the ones that came from the zoo that year, this fall, had parasites. So none of them were able to be raised. So just the fact that the kids were able to see that process and that everything isn't perfect in nature and everything isn't going to work out as, oh, it's a caterpillar, it's a chrysalis, it's a butterfly. Nope, sometimes they die. So the kids, they're always questioning. So Project Prairie has grown. We're currently at 16 schools. 5 more are coming on board this spring. The mommy schools, now that we're kind of out of the pandemic, will really start to come on board. Washington Local has agreed to install prairies at all their elementaries. I think they're building some new schools, 5 schools, and Whitmer. So we're going to be having a high school person joining us. Mommy, like I said, is coming in. The one at Wayne Trail then will give some access to the high school kids there as well. Toledo Public's adding some new schools. And then this past summer, a team of teachers wrote curriculum for grades 1 through 8 with what to do with that prairie and what to do with these flowers and grasses out in your backyard at your school. So we're hoping to get that out really soon here. It's in the last final editing stages. So it'll just be a free PDF curriculum that you'll be able to access from the zoo. And I can certainly get you more information about that as well. So we would love to help you have this happen at your school. And I saw we have a pre-service teacher. So just when you get into a school, just start thinking and looking and figuring out how can you get spaces outside to get kids involved outside, because especially now more than ever, we really need to be outside, and you can teach so much of your content and curriculum outside. You really can. I got so much done this fall, more than I've ever gotten done, believe it or not, in a pandemic, because I had the kids outside and their questions led us to just covering content. So, all right. So I talked really fast, which made me go and really early. So I would love to take questions, talk about how we can make this happen at your school, and Stacy and Ryan, how we can, really get you to help get those kids outside and start doing some of this stuff. So I will open it up to questions.
Amy, I actually have a question.
Sure.
I'm not a science person, but this was very interesting. Curious to know if, I know obviously during the pandemic, this isn't able to happen, but have you visited other prairies, or is that a possibility, or does that not make a difference because all prairies are going to be the same and there's no reason to, take your kids over to a different prairie? Because it just seems like since there's so many of them that maybe, are they different? Do they grow different things?
They actually do grow different things. There is one at Door Elementary in Springfield that has mostly sandy soil. And in Perrysburg at Hell Prairie, we have clay. So different plants are growing at different locations. We have not taken the kids on a field trip, but we have shared pictures with the kids. The one in Springfield is beautiful yellow flowers in the fall, just absolutely gorgeous. Whereas mine looks like this picture here, grasses and more kind of weedy looking things. And so it is kind of an ooh and ah factor. We did something this fall called a bio blitz. So a bio blitz is a one-day event where you try to catalog all the living things on your school grounds. So we did that with all of the schools that are participating in Project Prairie. And then the information was uploaded into iNaturalist. And then the kids could see similarities between them. Yeah, iNaturalist has pictures as well as data, so the kids could see some of those similarities between them. But a field trip would be amazing if you could actually get to go somewhere. Yes.
Um, so I know you said you did most of your curriculum outside this year.
Yes.
How are you able to tie in like curriculum that doesn't directly tie into the prairie, or was all that stuff still done in the traditional classroom?
So, as a fifth grade science teacher, we teach earth, physical, and life science. So, I made a point of doing all of my life science standards in the fall when I could be outside. And then when we switched to all remote, which is where we are now, it is all of my, fifth grade is space. So I'm doing space while they are stuck at home, right? So that's all computer stuff. They don't really, there's some hands on things, but it's not as much. So I organized my year. And then hopefully my physical science, my speed and cars and, where we're measuring things and racing cars will happen in the spring when they're back. So this year lend me to so you have to be flexible. So in other years, I might have taught the physical science first because I like to race the race cars and the Matchbox cars. But this year I was like, oh no, we're going to be outside. And I hope the weather cooperates. So yes. So fifth grade science standards that we were able to cover is food chains, food webs, life cycles. So it was very easy. Plants as pollinators, plant parts, pollination. It was very easy. Sixth grade standards are easy also. It's soil. So it's very easy to get out there. That's where we were burying underwear. So there are the life science standards are very easy to get out there. And then there's those overarching science standards and STEM standards of getting kids to ask questions and design experiments and do experiments and then share their data. All of that can be done out there as well. But great question. Sometimes it's hard when we look out and we go, oh my gosh, I have all these standards to cover. In this fifth grade, I have a state test and there's no way I'm going to cover everything. And how are the kids going to get it? Ultimately, I've taught the kids to be thinkers and to be curious. And those state tests that we all hate, the kids have to just be thinkers. They have to be able to think through those situations. So if we can get them to think, hopefully we can move through those. Great question though, Claire.
So Amy, where do you suggest that we start? Since we do have, at my school, we do have a brand new prairie. What would you suggest for like this spring for us to do?
So are you looping, Stacy? Do you loop?
Typically we do. I don't know what we're doing next year.
Okay.
So I have fifth grade this year. Last year I had fourth grade.
The same kiddos?
Yes.
Okay. So, next year when you start a new loop of kids, it'll be even better.
Mm-hmm.
So the first things that we did as our new prairie was coming in, and it sounds like you already have some established plants, compare this new prairie and the baby growth to what's already there, right? You said Christina put in some sunflowers and stuff. Pictures, if you can get them out with Chromebooks or iPads and take photographs, time lapse pictures of what's happening really shows the kids, because they don't notice the little amount. It's just like having your own kid, right? Like you don't notice your own kid has grown until the grandma comes by and says, whoa, you've really grown. So it's the same thing with these plants, and just getting the kids to notice how plants grow and change, looking for variety. Grab some hula hoops, throw them on the ground, and get them to start looking at what's inside those hula hoops. You can mark off your prairie. We did a big drawing of our prairie. Well, we had a drone take a picture. And then we marked it off into quadrants, and then we assigned kids different quadrants to watch. So they would always be watching quadrant A1. Your group is always watching quadrant A1 over time to see what happens and what changes.
Okay.
If you could get, even if you borrow from Mike over at Gateway, those little vials. Let me see if I can. Those are really, these kind of things are really great just to get kids to start capturing bugs again, like we did as kids. Any bug you want to capture, you should approach from behind with the cap in front. So the vial goes behind the bug, and you kind of like come in like this. So here's the cap. Here's the bug. You come in from behind the bug and push the cap on over. You can also capture bees. The capturing bees is amazing because you can see the pollen on their legs. And,
I remember we did that at the zoo.
yeah, I mean, just I would suggest, do you have any of these little containers?
I think we do.
Yeah,
We use FOSS kits sometimes.
Yeah,
so
old
I think
FOSS
we
kits have
some.
tons of these.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found out my FOSS ones are a little foggy, like the plastic
Yeah,
head.
they are. Yeah, they're old.
So we bought some new ones. Field guides are a quick, easy buy, or you can borrow them from the library. I can send you a list of the picture books that we've used to help tie the kids in. But really, it's just getting out there and making observations. I know. So you did the training at the zoo?
Yes.
And that
But
seems
at that time, I was just a computer teacher.
Oh, and
So
now
I wasn't, yeah, now I'm in the classroom. So
okay. So yeah, it's just getting the kids out there. Just
Yeah.
take your time and just go out. You just have to give yourself permission to go out. Is pretty much it. And you have to have rules. We have, there's no running, there's no yelling, there's no screaming if you see a bee. You have to talk about those rules, that we're outside. This is a classroom, and we behave like we're in the classroom. My prairie is so big that the kids like to run it like a racetrack. And our maintenance guys did a fantastic job of mowing this labyrinth of paths. And there's even a giant P in there for Perrysburg. And so the kids like to run it. So I tell them they can run it at recess. When you're here for science, we're doing science when we're out here. The other thing we've had to stop is, and this is going to sound sexist, but I don't mean it that way, the boys like to stick the bugs on the girls and chase the bugs with the girls, or like this poor little frog. Can't tell you how many girls screamed with that frog. So you just have to talk about respecting animals, respecting life, not stepping on them. Watching where your feet are going, not pulling things off of plants just because you want to look at it, leave it on there and look at it. So yeah, just teaching those little rules. As it gets bigger and more beautiful, you'll have way more cool things you can do. Scavenger hunts are always great. And I can share that with you. The kids, we took their Chromebooks out, and they had a pre-made slideshow that we did, and they had to find a plant taller than your knee, a plant taller than you, a plant smaller than your pinky. Those kind of things. We made it rhyme. And they had a great time going out and looking for those things.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Ryan, I suggest you just take the kids for a walk out there at the park behind you. The patch of prairie is directly behind the school, but almost to the road. So if
You're talking at Woodland?
Yeah, at Woodland, yes. There's nothing at Frank. When we were moving into putting these into more prairie or more schools, Perrysburg was transitioning 4 new elementary principals. And I didn't want to say, hey, by the way, you're brand new. Can you put a prairie in?
Right.
So I was waiting for them to settle in.
Yeah, I know Woodland also has that tiny little learning lab. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Which is more, I think that's more for like, I know like they plant, some of the classes will plant like pumpkins and things like that. So I think that's geared a little more towards, your more traditional like garden area.
Right. And so that's the thing about a prairie. So when we wrote our second grant with Martha Holden Jennings, they actually called me because they really wanted to give the grant. Martha Holden Jennings is a great organization for grants for teachers. And they really wanted to give the grant, but they wanted to make sure it wasn't just another school garden, because school gardens, most of the action happens in the summer when the kids aren't there. And so
Right.
school gardens have really gone the wayside because there's not much kids can do with them. You come back in the fall and those plants are at the end of their fruit season, and in the spring, those plants are just starting and not really doing much. So sunflowers and pumpkins are about the only thing you can do with kids because they're actually, fruiting in the fall. But these native prairies are so different because there's something out there year round. I mean, we can take a walk in the snow and look for footprints and tracks of animals and see what the plants do in the winter, and then we can watch them come alive in the spring, and we can watch them die off in the fall. And there's different animals that come out at all different times of the year, so the prairies are way different than those little gardens. So if you are interested in getting one, or feel like, I know STEM tends to lend more towards the engineering side of STEM, and I don't know what you're necessarily doing in our elementaries, but it does tend to lean more towards the coding and the robots and the
Right.
engineering. But this piece of it, there's a lot in the STEM as well. So I can happily help you move that forward.
Yeah,
But
honestly, I didn't even know that area was behind Woodland.
yes, it has one of those signs. Let me see. It has, where's this big sign here?
I assume it's kind of over towards the walking trail.
Yes, it's away from the playground, so opposite from the playground. And it'll have this sign here in the bottom right where it says Wild Toledo.
Okay.
And it'll say either saving monarchs or saving Lake Erie. I don't know
Okay.
which one they have out there. Yeah, it's a square patch. It's about an acre big if it hasn't been mowed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
they
it's for I just posted our remote Monday activity for this week. I posted it yesterday, and I had them do like a 5 senses nature walk. So it's funny that you're going over this topic today.
Perfect. Yeah. So those 5 senses nature walks, you can add them into, scavenger hunts as well, and looking for details. And like this grass in this picture, up close with a magnifying glass, these grasses, that whole head is seeds with these cool little barbs on them that stick to animals, and just getting them to make those observations.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep, I'm happy to help. Just email me and I can send you anything I have. I'm very prairie passionate.
I appreciate the info.
Yes.
Amy, I'm just curious if other content areas have used the prairie, like, art or language arts. Or I just visualize the opportunities for.
Yes. So definitely cross-curricular. Our fifth grade social studies focuses on Native Americans. And so they can go out, and this is what this area would have looked like to Native Americans, right? And so they can use that. Our art teacher has had the kids sit down and sketch. Just sit down and sketch something out there. Our ELA teacher has had them writing poems and stories and reading. And yes, it's very cross-curricular. The science teachers are the ones out there the most. And this year especially, we were out there the most, but all of them have been out there. And the kids asked to go out. And so they'll take them out. We have benches out there too, and bird houses and bird feeders and other things to kind of keep their interest as well.
Amy, I'm guessing initially, once they have the opportunity to go out and do this, they're pretty locked in because it's new for a lot of them.
Yes.
So I'm guessing you probably don't have a lot of behavior issues, and I'm sure you've gone over a lot of everything explicitly ahead of time. But
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about when those behavior issues arise, what they are, and how you deal with them?
So the main thing is they don't know how to sit still and observe, right? So, and plus they've been sitting in the classroom, so they're ready to run. So sometimes I let them run out to the prairie just to get that out. Like, just take a run out. And once we're there, we talk about that this is a classroom and we have to respect each other. We have to respect the plants and we have to respect the animals. The biggest thing is running. They want to run. And then, like I said earlier, they want to throw bugs at each other. So that's the big thing. The girls like to scream when they see a bug. So I have this acrostic kind of thing that spells out prairie and how to behave out there. And I can send that to you as well. It's just those conversations and then reminding. And I wear an old school whistle when I'm out there because I do let them, sometimes they follow me like little ducklings and I point out stuff. And sometimes I send them out on their own to explore with clipboards or their computers. And I do behavior management, right? So I stop the boys that are playing tag and sometimes you have to encourage kids to actually do something because it is unfamiliar, like you're saying. And some of them are leery about touching a bug or getting in there, or they don't want to, be brushed by a plant or touched by a bee. So it's just that. And yeah, that first year was a little rough because I didn't know, as a teacher, you don't know everything a kid's going to do until they do it. So, how you're always like, and don't stick the wires in your mouth. And I have to tell you that because somebody did. So it's just getting them out there and figuring out for yourself. I have taken small groups with my environmental club. I have taken whole classes. Both seem to do okay out there. But again, this is our third year with it. So we've been out exploring. Anything else? That is all I have. You are welcome to email me. I'll put up my email address here. If you want any resources from me, lesson plans, lists of trade books that we've used, the behavioral stuff or the scavenger hunt, I will share it all with you. So like I said, my scavenger hunt is actually a Google slideshow template that the kids use and then fill in. So I'm happy to share any of it. And Stacy, Mike is a great resource for you and Mommy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he is pretty awesome. But they're putting in, right now, they're working with Army Corps of Engineers for the old football field below Union to try and put in some native prairie plants there and to reroute the river a little bit to make some fish nurseries down there by the towpath. So
That's
he's
awesome.
involved with that as well. All right, that is all I have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was awesome. I
Yeah,
learned a lot. And actually, I'm curious to know, I drive down Route 163 to Marblehead because I have a lake house out there, and there is a prairie area that was put in on 163 that's absolutely beautiful in the summer when it's blooming. And I don't know that much about it. I just know that they did that like a couple years ago. And
so you'll start to see more of them. Yeah, now that you're aware of them, you'll start to see more of them. Farmers are actually putting them in strips between their farm field and the ditch. There's one on 5 Point and there's one on Hall Prairie that they're just putting in. They're taking an acre of their farmland and turning it into these native plants because it encourages the bees to come who then pollinate all their crops.
Okay.
So, and it creates a buffer from their fertilizer going into the ditch, which leads directly to the river, which leads directly to the lake, which we now know causes all the algal blooms. So yeah, you'll start to be more aware of these areas. OI here in Perrysburg has a huge one that is gorgeous. And I have seen their employees walking around out there and taking their walk and so yeah, you'll start to notice them more. Yep. But mainly they're to help pollinators. And as those pollinators are dying off, unfortunately.
Very, very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If, again, Amy's information is up on the screen. If you want to contact her, I appreciate Amy, the presentation. So just so that you know, the next presentations start at 10:45. So if you have a break to grab a cup of coffee, whatever it is that you need to do, and you're to go directly to that presentation. Again, if you, your email should have that chart that has the direct links